morning. Welcome to the Science of Mind class. You know, I always wonder whether I should introduce myself. I'm assuming everybody knows who I am, but I'm Dr. Petra Weldes, and I am happy that you're in the Science of Mind class with me. Hopefully, most of you I know, and we are walking through the Science of Mind. We're on page 166, 167. We're talking about mental and spiritual treatment, which is, of course, our form of affirmative prayer. So I want to give a nod to this one section that we're going to kind of move over pretty quickly. It's the section called Treatment Not Explained in the Bible. And so we talk about being part of New Thought, right? And actually, there's nothing really new about New Thought in the Science of Mind. It's New Thought. It doesn't mean that the philosophy itself is new. It means to have a new thought is what changes consciousness. And really the thing that the Science of Mind adds to the development of human spirituality and our expanded understanding of our relationship with the absolute, with the divine, with the presence of life itself, is this thing we call spiritual mind treatment. It is a specific form of prayer, a specific type of spiritual work that actually really is not intended to do anything to the universe. It is intended to shift our consciousness, to move us into alignment with spiritual truth. And so it's not something that we find in any other source texts. We don't find it in the Bible. We don't find it in the Bhagavad Gita. We don't find it in the Quran explained. Dr. Ernest Holmes really looked at what seems to be necessary to shift consciousness and to bring us into alignment with spiritual truth. And out of that, he created spiritual mind treatment. Now, in retrospect, some of you have taken the metaphysical teachings of the metaphysical Bible classes with me, and in the New Testament, we explore the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father, and we discover that it is, in fact, really perfectly aligned with our understanding of what makes a spiritual mind treatment so powerful. So while it may not be explained in the Bible, I certainly think there is an extraordinary representation of it. And probably why that prayer has been prayed by so many people for so long. So we're going to then go on to this section called What is a Practitioner? And we use that term practitioner to mean somebody who practices the science of mind, as opposed to, let's say, the word disciple, which means to follow in someone else's footsteps or to follow someone else's teachings. We have disciples in both Eastern and Western traditions. In the Science of Mind, we don't actually follow in somebody else's teachings. We don't follow Dr. Ernest Holmes as if he were a guru or a saint or somehow special. He was just an incredibly smart man and someone who dedicated his life to understanding spirituality without the trappings of cultural rituals and cultural norms, and tried to pull out what is that we all agree on, that's really that underlying truth. And then he compared it and pulled out from science and from philosophy the things that all seem to create this chord of truth that humanity has known for thousands of years. And so instead of being disciples in New Thought and in the Science of Mind, we practice living the teachings. We practice living the philosophy. We practice living the principles. And we practice being in alignment with them. And so instead of being disciples, we're all actually practitioners. We are practitioners of the science of mind. And so this paragraph could be one of the most insightful, concise statements of what it means to practice the science of mind. So we're going to start with this first paragraph. The one who attempts to heal themselves or another through a recognition of the creative power of mind and the ever availability of good is a mental or spiritual practitioner. Such a one refuses to allow negative thoughts to control their consciousness. They endeavor to greet the divinity in everyone they meet. Heal. Recognize the creative power of mind, the ever availability of good, refusing to allow negative thoughts to control our consciousness, and endeavoring to see the divinity in each person. That is a jam-packed paragraph. And just imagine what our lives would be like if we really truthfully did those things every day, regardless of the conditions and circumstances around us, regardless of what's going on in the outer world, rather than living in reaction to conditions, to actually be in that place of aligning with spiritual truth, knowing that that actually is going to make a difference, that it's going to actually outpicture in our lives. The one seeking to demonstrate the power of realization in everyday affairs, which is essentially what we're doing as a practitioner, practicing the science of mind. Ultimately, the science of mind is eminently practical. It should actually make a difference in the way you walk around in the world. It should actually inform our thoughts, our actions, the way in which we respond to things and how we take them up, and our expectation of the kind of life that we should be able to live, that we should be able to experience. And that this is what we're continually realigning ourselves with and expecting to demonstrate. The one seeking to demonstrate the power of spiritual realization in everyday affairs. And then it goes on to say, should believe in divine guidance, should believe in the fact that we are part of that infinite reality and that divine guidance is, in fact, showing us how to practice living in alignment with spiritual truth. So how do we do this, right? There's a lot of things going on in the world today, and especially in our own country, cities burning, black men being murdered. We have all kinds of issues with our climate. We have political divisiveness. We have the pandemic. We have the potential recession. We have challenges of staying at home or not. We have disagreements about whether or not we should be wearing masks. I mean, from the littlest things to the largest things, there's just all kinds of things going on. And we can be in a perpetual state of reaction to these things. Or we can seek to demonstrate the power of spiritual realization in everyday affairs by believing in divine guidance for ourselves and for those around us. So let's look at what does that mean? What does that mean to practice that? They should affirm that their mind is continually impressed with the images of right action, and that everything in their life is controlled by love, harmony, and peace. That everything they do prospers, and that the eternal energy back of all things animates everything which they undertake. Every objective evidence contrary to good should be resolutely denied, and in its place should come a sense of right action. They should feel a unity of spirit in all people and running through all events. They should declare that the spirit within is God, quickening into right action everything they touch, bringing the best out of all experiences and forever guiding and sustaining. The greatest good which their mind is able to conceive should be affirmed as a part of everyday experience. No matter what the occupation of such a person, he is a mental and spiritual practitioner. And from such daily meditation, they should venture forth into a life of action, with the will to do, the determination to be, and a joy in becoming. Okay, that's another jam-packed paragraph. So, starting out with expecting to demonstrate, seeking to demonstrate is the beginning. Believing in divine guidance is the next piece. Affirming that our minds are continually impressed with images of right action. That we are continually being impressed with the way of being in the world that's actually in alignment with spiritual living. That there's something within us that knows what that is, that knows what that looks like, that knows how to do that in any particular moment. That everything in our life is controlled by love, harmony, and peace. And that's a really powerful statement, right? Not to be fooled by the evidence of our senses, by the objective experience, not to be fooled by all the ways in which ignorance is showing up, all the ways in which we have not yet lived up to the aspirations of our faith. Not to be fooled that is a statement of ultimate reality. That just because it's been that way or is that way means anything doesn't mean that it should be that way or that it's going to continue to be that way. Right? That's what that means. Our mind is continually impressed with images of right action, that everything in our life is controlled by love, harmony, and peace. To affirm that and to see that. To affirm, to continually impress upon our minds that everything we do prospers and that the eternal energy back of all things animates everything which we undertake. Imagine that. To practice the science of mind is to have confidence that when we move and walk and live in the world, that we are supported, that eternal energy is animating everything that we do. All right, I see that we have a comment or question. Ryan, I'll turn to you.
Yeah, thanks. And just to remind everybody who's here in the Zoom room, if you guys have a question or a comment, feel free to hit me up in the chat box or hit the raise your hand icon down below. And so the first person I'm going to bring up, Dr. Petra, is Dr. Cecelia Williams.
Hi, Cecelia.
Hi. I was thinking while you were reading that, this morning, when I woke up, I had the most interesting urge. As I was moving out throughout my morning, I was thinking about all the events that are going on and the unrest and the things happening. And I know Friday night when I got word that there was rioting and looting downtown Dallas, I immediately dropped into spiritual mind treatment for the safety and well-being of every person down there. And and that's played in my head all day yesterday, and it's been heavy on my heart. And this morning, I got up and I was very impressed with writing out a statement of belief of what I believe as an educator. I don't think it's something I've ever done, and if I did it back when I didn't know anything about being an educator.
Right.
And I was just thinking while you were talking about when you were reading that, I'm like, yes, because as a practitioner of science of mind, I believe in a world that works for everyone. And because I believe that, I seek to manifest change in our educational system. And as a doctoral candidate and working on my dissertation, that is about change as well. And it hit me really hard that I need to know exactly where I stand. When I walk back into that classroom next year, I need to know what my mission and my purpose is.
Yes.
And it was just this like eye-opening revelation this morning, and I just wanted to share it.
That's awesome, Cecelia. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for listening to the divine guidance, right? You listened to that divine guidance and you sat down and you wrote that out. That is super cool. And it's exactly that keeps us focused on where we're going, right? On this spiritual truth that our lives are controlled by love, harmony, and peace, that what we do makes a difference, which prospers is so much more than just, financially prospers, like it's all about getting rich. No, it prospers. It does what it's supposed to do, manifests change, educates children, changes lives because of what you're doing. So thank you for sharing that. Good for you. And so, yeah. So following on the heels of what Cecelia just said, every objective evidence contrary to good should be resolutely denied. And in its place should come a sense of right action. And so what does this mean? This does not mean we turn a blind eye to what's going on. It doesn't mean we pretend it's not happening. Elsewhere in the Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes says we look a fact in the face and we deny its spiritual validity, its spiritual truth. That's what it means to say every objective evidence contrary to good should be resolutely denied. There is nothing within the love of the universe, within the truth of humanity, within the power of creation that says black men are less than anybody else, or that says our climate, our planet doesn't need to be taken care of. Do you see? We deny the spiritual truth of these things. We recognize that this is simply human ignorance playing out. And so what do? In its place comes a sense of right action, action in alignment with spiritual truth. And we get the term right action right from the Buddhists, right? The Eightfold Path, right thinking, right speech, right work, right livelihood. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, right? Which is the middle way, which is that which is in alignment. Emerson said that which is in alignment with my constitution, my spiritual being, not just the whims of any particular day or the reactions to any particular event. Right? Comes a sense of right action, comes right out of that divine guidance, knowing that we are continually over and over and over again realigning ourselves with these deep spiritual truths, with the highest vision, or as Cecelia shared, with that mission and purpose that we have for our lives. All right, Ryan, turning back to you.
So can you explain denial a little bit more? Sometimes I have trouble grasping that. Is it denying that it's happening, or is it coming from a different place?
Well, yeah, I guess that's a great question, Ryan, and that's really the point that I'm trying to make here. I think so often we misunderstand denial. Denial is not about pretending something's happening. So if I stub my toe, I don't say, "Oh, it doesn't hurt," right? But I recognize that there's nothing in the pattern of perfection for my physical being that holds that hurt in place, or that stands in the way of my toe healing. And this goes for everything, right? I can look at my bank account. I don't deny that maybe I've been without work and the finances are low. I don't deny the experience of that. What I deny is that there's anything about that that's spiritually true, that the universe wants me to be poor, or that I'm learning a lesson about finances, or that that the only spiritual truth about prosperity is that we live in an abundant universe. Anything unlike that is not revealing that divine right action. So I'm not denying the experience. What I'm denying is that it's somehow God ordained, spiritually true, or ultimately something that I am supposed to be experiencing. I deny all of those things, and I affirm the presence of the spiritual reality in that particular aspect or area of life. And I think this is particularly important. It's the biggest rookie mistake I know as somebody who's practicing the science of mind, and I've been practicing for a really long time. I'm sorry to admit that I still do it. Pretending something isn't there does not make it go away. Simply not looking at it, not looking at it, not looking at it, not looking at it does not make it go away. It's the spiritual confidence to look at something and say, this is not the spiritual truth. And a practitioner practicing the science of mind seeks to demonstrate the power of spiritual realization in everyday affairs. So when we look at something and we say, that's not the spiritual truth, we move into spiritual realization. And we expect that spiritual realization to demonstrate in everyday affairs, mine, ours, other people's, wherever we're focusing our attention. And so it's never about turning a blind eye. It's never about turning away from something. It's always about seeing what is spiritually so. He should feel, that practitioner, we should feel a unity of spirit with all people and running through all events. And so part of that is also taking a universal point of view, right? If we remember that we are all the infinite making itself manifest, that each one of us is a place where the universal is getting to experience what it's like to be an individual and getting to express and co-create and love and seek to be all that it can be as each one of us, right? We can begin to see that part of what's happening is we're all growing up. We're growing up individually. We're growing up collectively. We're learning what it means to be creative. We're learning what it means to have the power that we have over our environment, over others, over all the things that are going on in our world by the choices and the intentions and the ways in which we engage, right? We're learning all of that because we're the universe getting to experience all of that and wake up to this fact. And when we know that, we can see that we're all in this together. We're all in this together, and we're all having to wake up together. So the practitioner should declare that the spirit within them is God, is that divine life, quickening into right action everything he touches, bringing the best out of all his experiences and forever guiding and sustaining. Right? That's what it means to have a positive attitude, to have a positive expectation, to have confidence that because we're doing our spiritual work and we're practicing our spiritual truth, that right action is, in fact, being quickened within us. That we know what to do, we know what to say, we know how to move forward. We are guided in that, from that inner knowing of spiritual truth. And that is, in fact, bringing out the best of all of our, bringing the best out of all of our experiences. That we actually are bringers of light, and every experience we have, everything we're doing, whether it's for ourselves, for our community, elsewhere in the world, right? We are bringing out the best in what's going on. We should expect that. And that this spirit within us is forever guiding and sustaining. Now, here's a really powerful statement in the middle of all this. To practice the science of mind means the greatest good which my mind is able to conceive should be affirmed as a part of our everyday experience. Now again, this doesn't mean that we deny the fact that terrible, heinous things are happening, that significant things are happening to people and to our environment. But if we continually spend all of our time focusing on that and focusing on how awful it is, we are continuing to lend our energy and attention to it. What we need to do is look that fact in the face, look at that truth in the face and say, that is not the spiritual truth about humanity. That is not the spiritual truth about who we are. The greatest good which our mind is able to conceive should be affirmed as a part of our everyday experience. The greatest good which our mind is able to conceive. A world that works, lives that work, everybody included, everybody counts, everybody has enough of what they need. There's enough to go around. People are generally cared for, healthy, have what they need to experience. In my own life, that my creativity is expressed, that my abundance is enough for me to have the life that I desire and the things that I like to do, that the greatest good that I can conceive, that my children and grandchildren are well educated, have all the opportunities, and that the planet that they inherit from us is in good shape, right? That's the greatest good that I can conceive. That we actually do, in fact, awaken in every way that we can imagine as human beings. That should be affirmed as a part of our everyday experience. Not somewhere in the future, not sometime, somewhen, but every day. And notice that it has to be affirmed. We have to affirm the spiritual truth, which also means we have to look for evidence of the glimmers of where it is in fact demonstrating. And continually affirm it, because that is, let's go back to our statement, the very beginning. What is a practitioner? The one who attempts to heal themselves or another through a recognition of the creative power of mind and the ever availability of good. By affirming the greatest good which we can conceive as part of our everyday experience, do you see, we're using that creative power of mind deliberately for ourselves, for the good of our own lives, for the good of our own families, and for the good of others, for the good of our collective humanity. No matter what the occupation of such a person, he or she is a mental and spiritual practitioner. So this isn't about being a professionally licensed spiritual coach or practitioner. This is all of us. We're all doing this all of the time. All right, Ryan, I see that we have a comment or a question.
Yes, so I'm going to go and bring up Jeff. Jeff, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Jeff.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
So nice to be with you.
Yay.
I think that one of the great challenges in this process of turning away from the word deny somehow connotes resistance. Now, that may not be true for everyone, but as I think of it, I think that the only response to actually maintain our connection with truly being comes from acceptance. We have to accept what is, because when we do, it frees us from mind identification, and it then reconnects us to being, so that we can look at what is beautiful and peaceful and creative and loving. And so the resistance is the mind. That is a challenge for me in terms of being present. If I don't simply accept what is, then I'm not free to move toward a revisioning, another way of seeing perfection. So I don't find that deny is very helpful. I find, okay, so.
Yeah, and it may not be
there.
helpful to you, Jeff, and that's great. Many of us can find that do this work with purely affirmations. From a science of mind point of view, denial is not resistance, because you look a fact in the face. That means you see what is. What you don't do is accept that means that's what has to be. And that's the difference. And that is not a statement of resistance. That is a statement of truth. And so I think your point about resisting what is critical. Resisting what is of no value whatsoever. But the universal no is a powerful tool in metaphysics. And we lose the ability to say that universal no at our peril. Our yes is only as powerful as our no. And what we're saying no to is our sense of separation. What we're saying no to is the fact that what is what should be. We're saying no to the fact that what is somehow a prescription of what's going to be. Now, if you find ways to say that purely affirmatively, more power to you. More power to anybody who can do that. I have come to relish the times when a really powerful denial in my spiritual mind treatment. And remember, again, this is from practicing a spiritual point of view. This is not psychological resistance, which is an entirely different animal. Right? This is a causal statement that we're talking about, a statement in consciousness. It really has, in that sense, it has nothing to do with resistance. So again, I want to tease out that your point about resistance is powerful. Being psychologically in resistance to what is, spending all of our time wishing it weren't that way, railing against about how it is, wanting it to be different, all of those things we're simply engaged with the very thing we don't want, constantly engaged with it. But I have personally found such liberation and freedom when I'm able to say no, there is nothing in the universe holding this in place, because it frees me from the idea that I have to fight with it. I don't have to fight with it. I deny its power. I deny its validity. I deny that it has any hold on me. And my experience is with that kind of a powerful denial, it dissipates in the mist, like mist before the sun of truth. Right? Because then I start speaking truth. And that thing, which may have seemed overwhelming, may have seemed inevitable, may have seemed cast in concrete, or this is just the way it is, I discover that it has no substance. See, and that's really the fundamental denial, right? From Emma Curtis Hopkins, the fundamental denial is that there is any substance or truth to any experience that is unlike spiritual truth, right? That's what we're denying, not the experience. We're not in resistance to the experience. Again, I want to affirm that the being in resistance to it is of no value. But what we're denying is that it has any substance. It has any ultimate causal reality behind it. And remember, this is a part of that recognition that there are not two powers. There's not a power for good and a power for evil. There's not a power for good and some other power that's making a mess. This mess that we see, this mess that we don't like, this mess that is not okay, this mess that is heinous and unacceptable, it has no substance to it except for the substance we give to it, either through our intention, expectation, resistance, any of those kinds of things. And so a powerful denial of the substance of that, it has no power. It actually has no power. The only thing that has power is life itself, and the spiritual alignment with that is such a place of freedom. If you don't need a denial, great. You don't ever have to use one. There's no requirement to use them. But let's not be afraid of them. Ryan, I saw your hand.
Yeah, we actually have a couple people who
Great.
want to say something. So I'm going to first start off with Walene, and then we'll move to Dennis. So Walene, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Willeen.
Hi, Petra. So, what you said right at the beginning of that explanation around denials was amazing. So it was face it, right? So recently, the flight, fight, or freeze, what do? We face it instead of those. And so, that word denial to me just means face it. And just stand in front of it and know, like you said, don't deny that it's there. But you face it, you don't flight from it, you don't fright from it, you don't freeze, you face it.
Right.
So I just brilliant and
Beautiful.
Before the explanation, I mean, that was it. It's like, just face it. It's not a resistance. It's just a standing in what is and saying what it is you want.
Yes, it's seeing what is the current outpicturing, recognizing whatever current outpicturing out here is simply history. And there is no point in resisting it. It is an outpicturing of ideas and thoughts and beliefs that have been held in consciousness in the past. Because this out here is always an outpicturing of something that's going on in causal reality, in consciousness, right? And so it's history. There's no point in resisting it. There's no point in pretending it's not there. There's no point in saying it's not a real experience. This is nonsense. Nothing in the science of mind says your experience is an illusion. You are actually having the experience of it. And when it hurts, it really does in fact hurt. But we deny that it's a prescription for how life should be. We deny that it's a prescription for that tomorrow or the next minute it has to be the same. That's what we're saying. There's nothing holding it in place except for whatever has created it in the first place. And the moment that has changed, whatever is creating it, whatever the false belief, the negative connotations, the old ideas and expectations, the moment that those are shifted to spiritual truth, this thing dissipates like mist before the sun. There's nothing holding it in place when we take our energy off it and place our energy on aligning with divine right action into spiritual truth. This is the whole point, right? It has no substance of its own. And so when we do that denial, we are denying its validity. We're denying its truth with a capital T, right? And as you said, Willeen, you face it, and then you tell the truth about it. Good. Okay, Dennis.
Before we get to Dennis, I just want to give a shout out to all the folks that are commenting out here on our Facebook world.
Wonderful.
Shout out to Gary Lynn Floyd. He said he really needed to find you this morning.
Oh, yay, Gary.
So, yes, Gary has some great ties here, so I just want to give him a special shout out.
And we've been loving your music.
Yeah, absolutely. And Reverend Karen's on here as well, too, so shout out to her. And out to all the ministers, out to all the other community members and staff that are on here as well. So, Dennis, do you want to go ahead and just unmute yourself?
Oh, good morning.
Good morning, Dennis.
I have come to really embrace denials, done properly, of course. But there's an area I'm practicing right now, specifically. It's like with angry people. Okay, people that don't show up the way I would prefer that they show up. Okay, so what I deny is that that's the truth of their divinity.
Yes.
And then I just go within, take a deep breath, get my egoic self out of the way, because my egoic self wants to lash out back at them.
Right.
And then just move forward in a peaceful, calm, and probably, more often than not, seek to understand.
Yeah.
Why do they feel that way?
Mm-hmm.
And like you just said, it's like, and it just melts away. Suddenly, I'm serious, suddenly the whole atmosphere changes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
That's like a real thing.
good. Thank you, Dennis. It's an interesting thing to practice, and we do practice it incorrectly at our peril. And again, Jeff, you said something really important. When denial is purely resistance to what is, it is of no value. We're not denying the what is, the experience. What we're denying is the spiritual truth. Dennis, as Dennis, you said, we're denying that that's the spiritual truth of the person who's standing in front of us, right? Which is exactly the same thing we do, whether they're angry, whether they're ill, or whether they're suffering from some condition that they don't want to experience, poverty or whatever it is, right? That's what we're denying, that there's anything spiritually true about that. Yes, absolutely, it's a real experience. It's an absolutely real condition. People are really experiencing it. Some of it is horrific and horrible and awful. But there's nothing in the universal reality that says that that is the way it has to be or should be, and that it can be absolutely in alignment with spiritual truth as we know it. Ryan.
So Carol Merlo, shout out to her.
Hi, Carol.
I see she has a really good question for this. She asks, what determines divine right action?
What determines divine right action? Like what do we mean by the word divine right action? Is that what we think she means by that question? What do we mean? How do we know whether it's divine right action? That is a great question, right? And I think Dennis pointed to it with the egoic, how easily we can be fooled by our egoic needs. And that's why we do spiritual practice, right? That's why we seek to imagine not only the greatest good that we can imagine, but we seek to imagine what would it look like to embody love, to embody peace. Ryan.
So she's clarifying, she asked how to decide what it is.
Yes, how to decide what it is. Good. So for me, divine right action, so let me just finish that statement because it'll tie right into your question, Carol. So this is why we spend time meditating and contemplating the qualities of God, the qualities of life, the qualities of the divine. And what we call spiritual truths or spiritual principles. So life is always for life, right? You can just look out in nature. Life is always for life, right? Even in the cycle of life of animals eating other animals and things dying, and you can see it's always for life. It's always in service to more life. So this is a fundamental truth, right? This is a fundamental spiritual truth about the nature of reality and the nature of life itself. And so when I contemplate that, life is always for life. And I find myself seeking to act in my life or think about something in my life. Do you see? I have that contemplation and mystical experience, the meditative experience of having really touched the reality of what that means. And then I'm either in alignment or I'm not. The more that we do the work, the more effortless it is to tell whether we're in alignment with spiritual truth or not. Now, I think we get confused sometimes when we want divine right action to give us a form. Should I take this job or that job? Should I buy this house or that house? Should I do this thing or that thing? And my experience is that it's about qualities and experiences. Divine right action aligns us with things that fall into alignment with certain qualities and experiences. Sometimes the truth is either decision might allow you to have that experience that quality of life. So divine right action, to my way of thinking, is not so much about form as it is about aligning with the quality or the experience of life that we're seeking, which is, again, circling back, why we spend time. What does it mean to be peace? Well, being peace doesn't require the people around us to be behaving a certain way. To be in the quality or state of peace means I'm at peace regardless of what's going on around me. That took me a long time to learn. That was a lot of contemplation. Being at peace doesn't mean controlling my environment. It means that I'm centered in the truth of who I am, and I'm absolutely centered in the trust of life, regardless of what's going on around me, so that I can move from that place of peace, right? So I guess that's another thing I would say. Divine right action is always about where we're coming from, not where we're going to. It's a way in which we engage, as opposed to some series of outer forms and decisions. And for me, divine right action is never contractive. It energetically is never contractive, because life is never contractive. Life is always for more life, and for the expression and creation of itself, for the pouring out of love and the delight of all of that. And so for me, some of the times the check around divine right action is an energetic experience. Well, how's my energy? Where is it? And so opening as opposed to closing, expansive as opposed to contractive. I will say sometimes divine right action has a little fear in it, but usually it's my ego that's afraid. Like, what do you mean you want to go do that? How do you know it's going to be safe? How do you know it's going to be okay? How do you know blah, 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 right? Trying to figure it out. And actually, I wouldn't so much say that that's my ego. I would actually say that that's our reptilian brain. That's its job, is to keep us safe. But I certainly don't want to have my life run by that. And so paying attention, right? Paying attention to how I talk about it, how I feel about it. All of these things are ways in which I can sense whether or not this is in alignment. And I guess ultimately then that's the primary word, right? Alignment. Is it in alignment with the spiritual truth as I understand it? Is it in alignment with what I experience when I have my deepest experiences of the presence? And then ultimately, that's what this feedback mechanism is, right? This is an outpicturing of all that stuff that's going on in consciousness, good, bad, or indifferent. And if I don't like the result that I'm having, that teaches me something, right? That shows me, oh, these things are not, I was obviously not in alignment because I just made a mess instead of making something better. And of course, we're seeing it being played out on the grand stage right now, as humanity is getting to see the messes that it can make, has been making. But good enough, it feels like they're so present to us because there's actually a lot of movement that we've made. And so when we're making messes and we're not in alignment, it's more and more and more and more obvious. Thank God. It's more and more and more and more not okay. It's more and more not acceptable. It's more and more clearly out of alignment, right? Clearly out of alignment. And there's very little question about that. And so those are all the ways in which we can sense into whether we're available to divine guidance, whether we're moving with divine right action. And this is the other reason it's called a practice, right? We have to practice these things. We have to practice moving in what we think is divine right action and then seeing, how did that go? Right? You've all heard me say, I don't think we're here to learn lessons. I think we're here to create and express. We do learn lots and lots of lessons along the way. And fundamentally, the biggest lesson we're learning individually and collectively is the outpicturing of our choices. The choice is either an alignment with life, alignment with love and peace and harmony, and is forwarding life in general, or it's not. And truthfully, there's a whole host of decisions and actions in between those two things that, I guess sort of thank goodness don't carry all the weight for either like super in alignment or super not in alignment. But there's a whole host of actions and activities really that are just, what do you want? What do you want to express? How do you want to be? How do you want to show up? Do you want to play more with art and creativity? Do you like working with children? Do you love being in nature? There's I would say at least 50% of our lives, there is no right. And I guess that's I guess that's the other thing we should say. Divine right action has nothing to do with right and wrong. It also doesn't have to do with the question, is this the best thing for me to do? According to whom? Emerson says this fabulous thing, I think it's in the essay Self-Reliance. He says this fabulous thing. He said the choice that most people make is not actually a proper choice, because it is the choice of their appetites, or the choice of their, what's the word he uses? The choice of their appetites and of the outer man, which I take to mean the ways in which we've learned we should be. He said the only real choice is the choice that is after my constitution, out of the I that I am, and the way that the I that I am shows up uniquely as me. And in that sense, there's divine right action is only that which allows us to fully further and express ourselves and engage with our deepest desire to be all that we can be and show up in the way that we can show up. And there's no right or wrong in that. It's just allowing that to express and finding and allowing the feedback, right? So I think we never want to confuse divine right action with our incessant search for the right answer or doing it the right way. That's a psychological pattern that so many of us have, that we, and then it moves into perfectionism and procrastination, and we just make ourselves crazy. And this is one of the challenges, I think, that is so one of the things with spiritual work is that to really understand what the words mean, and from a spiritual point of view, which is different than a psychological point of view. And it's often different than popular wisdom, common, ordinary wisdom. And so we have to, these are the kinds of questions that we get to contemplate. What does that mean? What does that look like? How will I know that? Okay, great, Matt, great question. So, the greatest good which our mind is able to conceive should be affirmed as a part of our everyday experience. So not only should we be affirming it every day, but we should be affirming that it is part of our ordinary life, that it's not a miracle, it's not extraordinary, but that the greatest good which we can conceive, a life that works and a world that works, should be affirmed as the way it should be, the way we expect it to be. And when we do that, we are a mental and spiritual practitioner. And from such daily meditation, right? So we're meditating and affirming every day on the greatest good that our mind is able to conceive. We should venture forth into a life of action. Right? We don't just sit at home and do the work in consciousness. We should venture forth into a life of action with the will to do, the determination to be, and the joy of becoming. So because we are aligning ourselves, because we are affirming these spiritual truths and that we should be expecting to demonstrate the power of the spiritual realization in everyday affairs, then we move in life with action, with a willingness to do, to show up, to be a part of what's going on, the determination to be present, to be all that we can be, to be love and peace and joy, and the joy of becoming. And to me, that's also the confidence of the expectation that our alignment, the divine right action that we're engaging with, does in fact demonstrate. And that is the confidence with which we move over and over and over again. That's the confidence with which we move. And whether we're moving in our own life to heal ourselves of a physical illness, or change the condition of our finances, or build healthy relationships in our lives, or whether we're doing that collectively for humanity, for the planet, for the healing of racism, the healing of any sense of separation and otherness, right? We should move forth into a life of action with the will to do, the determination to be, and a joy of becoming. Knowing that everything that we do as we listen to that divine right action comes out of affirming the greatest good which we are able to conceive. Now, we're actually going to spend the talk a little bit later here in the Sunday celebration. What does it look like? What is that greatest good that we can conceive? And we may not know how it's going to come about, but what is that greatest good that we can conceive? And I promise you, it's not stuck where we are today. Principle is not bound by precedent. Just because it happened, and it happened yesterday, and it happened the day before that, and it happened the day before that, and it happened 100 years ago and 400 years ago, principle is not bound by precedent. And even though we have not fully reached our spiritual maturity, we are on the way. That is the greatest good that I can imagine, the spiritual awakening of humanity, that we mature into that place where we know that we are here to be loved. We know that we are here to create meaningful lives. We know that we're here for the delight of creation, for the delight of expression. And we stop worrying about whether we have enough, or whether we have to, somebody's going to take it from us, or there's not enough to go around, and we have to hoard. All of that just dissipates. It just dissipates because we know we are. And that creates lives that work. That creates a world that works. That's the greatest good that I can imagine. That's what I affirm every single day. Every day. I don't deny that it's not yet fully expressing in my life, in the life of the collective. Not everything I've affirmed for myself is yet fully expressing in my life, but it does not detract from the fact that I continue to affirm it, because I have seen in my own life so many things that I have affirmed, the great good that I have affirmed, and I have seen that come about as I have been grown and changed, as I have become more of who I am. And I believe that is exactly what the gift we have for humanity, is to do that, affirm over and over and over again the greatest good that we can imagine, not just for ourselves, but for all of us. And then to move into a life of action with the will to do, the determination to be, and a joy to becoming. That's our gift. That's the gift that we have. That's the love that we have. That's the life that we have to give, so that we can look at each other and say, yes, actually, we are contributing through divine right action to the awakening of humanity, to its spiritual magnificence, that we can grow ourselves into the great, divine, radiant, magnificent beings of love and light that each and every one of us are. So I encourage you to spend time with this. It's 3 paragraphs. What is a practitioner? not a professionally licensed practitioner, I do want to say, right? We do have professionally licensed practitioners. We call them licensed spiritual coaches because not everybody knows what the word practitioner means. And our licensed spiritual coaches, the professional mental and spiritual practitioner is one who has dedicated their life, their time, energy, and intelligence to helping others through mental and spiritual means and methods. Right? They have dedicated their lives to doing that for you, not only for themselves. And so, just as a reminder, our licensed spiritual coaches are available to you. They're available to you every Sunday after the Sunday celebration. They spend a whole hour in a Zoom room. And if you go to that Zoom room, they will put you in a breakout room with our licensed spiritual coach. And you can have a conversation about the thing that's on your mind. And they will help you find an appropriate denial and an appropriate affirmation. And they will do that spiritual work with you, a spiritual mind treatment. And we do this over and over and over again so that they can teach you how to do it for yourself, which is, of course, why we have all the classes and all the other things that we do. All right. So we have, so the next couple of sections speak directly to the professionally licensed spiritual coach, the professionally licensed practitioner. The first requisite of being a professional practitioner, the practitioner's business, that sort of thing. So we're actually going to skip those two sections. If you are interested in becoming a licensed spiritual coach, or are already one, you might want to read those sections. And we're going to go on to the different methods of spiritual mind treatment when we get together again next week, because it's just fabulous. Okay, so as you know, it's my favorite book. It's fabulous. It's so lovely to be with you and to go over and to be with you and to be speaking about science of mind with you. I hope that it sustains you today. I hope it sustains you today and every day and gives you hope. Gives me hope and courage to be with you. So, have a very blessed day, and we will see you in the celebration in just a little while. I love you very much. I'm grateful to be with you. Bye for now.